Welcome back to the Octopus Prime channel. So today I'm going to start a new series on Linux desktops. And this will be for non-technical people. So if you've never used Linux, you're a Windows user or even maybe a Mac user, I'm going to be showing you how to set up a Linux desktop inside a virtual machine here. But I'll also give you instructions on how you could use it with an older computer. So if you're just curious about Linux, or you have some older computers that aren't working with the newer Windows 10 or 11 anymore, this is the right place for you, because you can revitalize an old computer, and almost always Linux will run beautifully on an older computer, which won't even run Windows anymore. And you don't have any licenses to deal with or anything like that. So I'm going to do this sort of in two chunks. In the first video, I'm going to show you how to set it all up and install it, which will be pretty straightforward. I'll show how to do it in a VM, and I'll explain how to do it on a physical machine. And then in the next video, I will give you the grand tour and show you that Linux is actually really user-friendly. There's this stigma out there, or this perception, that Linux is all command line hacker stuff like you see in the movies and on TV, and it's just simply not the case. If you don't want to use command line for anything, you really don't have to as a normal desktop user for business and home use. No reason to do that. You can survive perfectly fine in a Linux environment, never touching a terminal if you don't want to. So I'm going to remove some of that fear and misconception about it, and we'll see if we can get you to follow that curiosity and give it a try, at least in a virtual machine where you can play with it. So one of the things that is good about using a virtual machine is that you can test all kinds of different things. So basically you just need hard drive space, and then you could test all kinds of different Linuxes out there, and it never touches your actual real machine. So it's a good place to test out things and see, oh, well, I like this one, or I didn't like that one. It's safe, it's not going to harm anything on your computer, and then when you're ready to actually make the leap, you can get an older computer or try it on a different computer and actually install it on a physical machine. So let me share my screen here, and we need a couple of things to get started today. I'm going to be showing you how to install Manjaro Linux. There's a lot of different Linuxes out there. I will spend a little bit of time talking about them in today's episode, and probably a little bit more in the next one. I propose this one because it's quite user-friendly when installed, and I think you'll just have a good experience with it, and it's fast. And it comes with all the basic stuff, but not too much baggage and so forth. So the first thing we need, whether you're installing it on a virtual machine or on an old computer, we need to download the image. So if you go to manjaro.org, and I'll post all the links in the description below. If you go to manjaro.org, you can see on the main screen there's a download button here. And what we're going to do is this KDE Plasma. There's different desktop environments. One of the biggest issues with Linux is there's so much choice. People who aren't used to Linux, who've been using Microsoft or Apple products their whole life, they've been told what to do their entire life. And so when you're presented with a whole lot of choice, it's actually kind of scary. You don't know what to do or where to go. So I'm going to help you, guide you through that. I'm not going to get into these other ones. If you're an Apple type person, the GNOME desktop might be more your flavor. I'm going to focus more on Windows users and just everybody in general. And the KDE Plasma desktop is a beautiful desktop that you'll be very comfortable with if you're a Windows user, and it'll have a lot of stuff that you're used to just kind of work right out of the box without having to even go looking for anything weird. So you click download on here, and you download this file, and you're going to get this what's called an ISO file, a .iso file. I already have it on my computer, so I'm going to cancel this, but go ahead and save that into your downloads folder or somewhere. Now, whether we install this on a virtual machine or on a physical machine, you need that image. If you're going to install this on a physical machine, I take no responsibility for your data or losing your data or whatever. It is your responsibility to back up your data and assume that you're going to wipe out the hard drive on whatever computer that you're doing this. I will do a future video on dual booting where you can set up Windows and Linux to dual boot. You can choose one or the other to boot when you boot up the computer, but I'm going to keep this video simple for non-technical people. So step 1, download KDE Plasma on the Manjaro site. If you're going to put it on a physical computer, you'll need a second tool. Your system may have one. One I like to use that worked well on Windows when I did use Windows is Balena Etcher. It's a free tool. You can download and install that. And what this lets you do is take an ISO image and flash it onto a USB stick like that, right? So you basically choose the file and plug in your USB stick and choose the stick, and it will put that ISO file onto the USB stick in a special way that lets you boot off of it. So then you would take that USB stick, plug it into your old computer or whatever you want to play around with Linux on, and you would tell the computer to boot off that USB stick, and then it would boot into the Linux environment, and then you can either test it or you could install it. But what we're going to do today is use a virtual machine. And so if you're not used to virtual machines, it's a type of technology that lets you run virtual computers on your computer. And so they're sort of self-contained computers. And so you can try out all kinds of different things in these virtual machines, and they won't bother your main computer. So you can break all kinds of stuff in there and test it and be, sure that it's not doing anything to your main system. So if you don't already have VirtualBox installed, it's an open source free virtualization system. You can go ahead and go to virtualbox.org. Again, I'll put the link below. Click download. And what you're going to want to do here is download the VirtualBox host or platform packages for your host. So if you're on Windows, you would choose the Windows host. If you're on Mac OS, you would choose the correct Mac OS host. And if you're already on a Linux distro, which is unlikely since you're coming here to learn how to install Linux, it's usually in the system software repositories or basically the App Store for Linux. You can go ahead and download the VirtualBox extension pack if you like, but we won't need it for this video. So go ahead and download VirtualBox and go ahead and install it on your system. Now we have the two things we need. We have the Manjaro image, the ISO image, and then we have VirtualBox to test it in. Okay? So let me minimize that. I'm going to open up my VirtualBox. You can see I have a few virtual machines running here. That's the beauty of virtual machines. I can have as many as I have hard drive space. And when I'm done with them, I just delete them and they're gone. This is how I teach my students. We use virtual machines. So what I'm going to do once I'm in VirtualBox here, I'm going to click New. And I'm going to try to use just the defaults here. There's one setting we'll have to change after, but we'll try to keep this super simple for you. And this is, of course, you wouldn't need to do this on a physical computer. I'll let you know when we catch up with the physical computer thing. But so you can give this any name you want. I'm going to just call mine Manjaro VM. In this ISO image section, guess what? We're going to go select that Manjaro ISO image that you just downloaded. So mine's in my downloads folder, and so you can just go browse for it. And so you want to choose that. Under OS distribution, we need to choose Arch Linux because Manjaro is a type of Arch Linux, and don't worry about that. I will get into that while it's installing. I'll tell you a little bit about the Linux ecosystem and what's what in there. Don't worry about it for now. Just choose Arch Linux from the OS distribution. Next, we want to choose Specify Virtual Hardware. And you want to give this, at least 8 gigabytes of RAM, the virtual machine. It all depends how much memory your main system has. You can see I have like 64 gigabytes of RAM, so I have lots of memory to give. I could give it more, but 8 gigabytes will be plenty. So you can see that even on an older computer, Linux will run very nice. And I'm going to give it a couple of CPUs. Try to give it at least 2. If you can, give it 4. Then we'll click this specify virtual hard disk here. And we can just set this to 32 gigabytes for now, which will be plenty for testing. Okay, and then we'll click finish. And so now here's our Manjaro VM. I won't go and change all the different settings. I could do another video on that sometime on how to choose optimal settings for a virtual machine. But in this virtual machine, it'll have virtual hardware, and it will behave like a real life physical machine plugged into your network, but it's just a piece of software running on your computer. It's pretty cool. We need to make one change so that you have a good experience when you boot up this virtual machine. If I right click on my Manjaro VM and click settings, there's all kinds of settings categories here. And don't worry about them, don't get bogged down in the weeds here. If you click display, what we want to do here is you probably want to drag the video memory all the way to the end. And that will just help the screen resize nicely when we're installing Linux on here. And that's it. You can leave everything else the way it is, and we can click OK. So now we're ready to start the machine. So this is now where, if you were doing this on a real machine, you would plug your USB stick into the real machine after you've done all your backups, and there's nothing on the machine that you're afraid of losing, of course. You'd plug in your USB stick on the virtual machine, or on the physical machine. You would boot up the physical machine, and it should automatically select the USB often. If it doesn't, you might have to select it, but it will boot off the USB and start booting Linux. And that's what this is going to do now. So I'm going to double click Manjaro VM here, and it's going to start up my virtual machine in this little window here. And it can ask me, do I want to boot with open source drivers or proprietary drivers? In a virtual machine, we can just leave it at the default with open source drivers. You can just don't touch it, it'll just boot up on its own. On a physical machine, if it's an older machine, you can use the open source ones. If it's a newer machine with like newer video cards and stuff, you might want to choose the proprietary drivers. Now here comes the neat part. What it's going to do, now whether we're on a physical machine or a virtual machine, it doesn't matter, you're going to sort of see the same thing here. What it's going to do is boot into a fully functional live environment. And I'm not sure there's a Windows equivalent to that. I know years ago there was a Linux or a Windows sort of environment boot disk, and it probably still exists. But the nice thing about this, now that we're booted into this Linux USB stick, we haven't installed it yet. It's a fully functional live environment. So if you ever need to rescue files, like if you have a virus infected old Windows computer that won't even boot anymore, you can boot off that USB stick and you can actually rescue your files and everything from it. I won't get into a bunch of that here today, but if you ever need to go fetch files from a Windows system that won't even start anymore, as long as it's software damage and not hardware damage, you can use this live environment. And this live environment, you can install software and you can run everything and you could test it without ever installing anything on a computer. So I always actually carry one of these with me wherever I go. So if a friend is having computer issues or whatever, I can boot into a Linux live environment and help them out. What we're going to do here today, as you can see in the top here, install Manjaro Linux. And don't worry, we're going to fix the screen so that it's a nice full-size screen, and I'll adjust the fonts and everything, and we'll make it all pretty and work nice for you. So today's goal is just to get it installed, and then we'll pick up the video for next time doing the whole tour. So I'm going to double click on install Manjaro Linux here. And I can maximize this if I want to make it easy. And now watch. We're going to install Linux in like less than 10 clicks. Okay? So I'm going to click Next, American English. It should mostly detect my location. I'm near Winnipeg, Manitoba. You can click on the map to choose your location wherever you are in the world, or choose it from the list here. The default it chose for me is fine. I'm going to click next. So that's 2 clicks. It's going to choose the keyboard. We'll have an English US keyboard, so I'm going to click next. So that's 3 clicks. Because we're inside a virtual machine, I'm going to just leave it at the default, where it's going to just erase the disk and replace everything that's on the hard drive or the virtual disk with Linux. And if you were doing this on an old computer and you had backed up everything and you're okay with wiping everything, you would just leave it on the erase disk. I will get into more complicated partitioning another day. Okay, so we'll click next. So that's 4 clicks. I'd like you to compare this to a Windows install someday. So I'm going to put my name in here, and what I want to name the computer. I'm going to name it the same as what I called the virtual machine, and I'm going to choose a password. And I'm going to say, hey, use the same password for my administrator account. And I'm going to click next. So that's 5 clicks. For convenience, it's going to ask me, hey, do you want an Office suite installed? I'll show you a really cool one later that looks almost identical to the Microsoft Office. For now, you can choose LibreOffice, which is also a good fallback and a great piece of software. So it's a free Office system with spreadsheet and documents and presentations and databases and the whole works, all free. You can click next. So that's 6. And now it's just saying, here's an overview of what's going to happen on your machine. You can just click install. So that's 6. And it's just confirming, like, hey, are you sure you want to, like, wipe out your disk and put this on there? I'm going to just say install now. So that's 7. That's it. So in 7 clicks, we're installing Linux on our system. No terminal, everything graphical, beautifully user-friendly, actually simpler than the Windows 10 and Windows 11 installation. So while this is installing, let me talk about the Linux ecosystem just for a moment. There's a lot of Linux flavors out there, and these flavors are just variations. So remember I talked about choice. People are afraid of choice because they've been told to do something a certain way all their life. Well, in Linux, kind of anything goes, which is fantastic when you're comfortable with it, and really scary when it's new and you're not comfortable with it. But Linux is all about freedom and choice. So nobody's going to tell you how to do something. So there's always a bunch of different ways to do something. Which is why I'm guiding you through the simplest way to do something here, so that you can see that it can be very easy. There's several larger Linux sort of companies out there. One of them is Ubuntu, which is one of the most popular server Linux, what's called a distribution. It's like a flavor or variation or variant would be another way to call it, but the official word they use is distribution. Ubuntu is one of the most popular server distributions in the cloud. Most of the IT infrastructure on the planet runs on Linux, which you may or may not be aware of. New York Stock Exchange, NASA, most of the governments run on Linux. Another one is Red Hat, another one is SUSE. There's Debian. There's all these sort of different flavors. And what happens is people take the one and they'll turn it into a different Linux. So for example, Debian is like the parent distribution for Ubuntu. So Ubuntu takes Debian Linux and tweaks it and makes it, puts all of their eye candy in it and tweaks it to make it their own and relabels it Ubuntu and then offers it up as Ubuntu, right? So there's all these different distributions, and each one is sort of very similar but different. Each one has sort of their claim to fame, and There's places that you can go to check out all the different distributions out there. There's literally hundreds of them. I'm showing you a common one today that is really user-friendly, and it's a good one to start with. Another good one to start with is Kubuntu, and I'll put the link below as well if you want to try that one as well. So you could start up a brand new virtual machine, and then you maybe don't want to run the virtual machines at the same time if you don't have the resources on your computer to do so. You shut down one and you create a new one. And you can put Kubuntu on there in the exact same process, go through the installer. It'll be similar but slightly different, and try that one out. Virtual machines let you try out all these different Linuxes, and then you can kind of choose like, hey, I really like that one, or I didn't like this one, etc. There's a whole world to discover out there. I think once you start playing with it and get over the initial hurdle or preconception that you might have from what people have said or TV or movies, I think you'll find that Linux is fantastic. Some of the most computer illiterate people in my life have thrived on Linux because it just works. Yes, when something goes wrong, it could require some technical intervention from somebody more technical, but the exact same could be said to be true of Windows and Mac OS as well, right? It's still made by humans, and therefore it has flaws and it has errors just like everything else that human beings make. So, I'm curious to see if there's any comments about people who have installed Windows themselves, because not everybody has. But if you've installed Windows 10 or Windows 11 recently, and it's fresh in your memory, versus this installation, which I think was 6 or 7 clicks. I promised less than 10 clicks to install Linux. Like to hear your comments about that. So one of the things is just finding the distribution that you like. The other thing with all of this choice is that there's sort of like, if you think of a car and you have an engine in the car, and then you have the body of the car, which, you know, you choose your favorite paint color and nice rims and you know, flashy bits on it that make it look really nice. Linux is kind of like that. You can have different distributions that have the same engine underneath, but have a totally different exterior, right? And so what we're running here, if you recall, we downloaded Manjaro KDE edition. KDE is what the desktop is called that we're running. So we're running this engine, and on top of it, everything you see here is KDE. And so it's the visual thing that you're interacting with when you're looking at your screen. So it's just like Windows 10 or Windows 11, you know, you have Windows on the screen, and you have a start menu, and you have widgets and all kinds of things going on. That's the graphical or user interface, a UI. And KDE is one of many UIs that you can choose for Linux. There's that choice thing again that puts everybody off. You can choose multiple different front ends to put on top of the engine to make it look any way you like, right? Like at the beginning I said, oh, there's GNOME if you're more Apple inclined. Totally very different than KDE. KDE would be more where Windows users will be very comfortable in it very quickly. Okay, so there's all this stuff to explore, and it can be overwhelming. I'm trying to guide you into how to get this installed and up and running so that you can play with it. So in the next video, what we're going to do is do a whole tour, and I'll show you how to customize it and make it look real nice, and we'll install some apps, and I'll show you how that works. Very simple. In fact, the app store that you use on your mobile phone or your tablet actually comes from Linux. The idea of an app store comes from Linux. And in fact, if you're running an Android phone or tablet, you're already running Linux. That is Linux. I'm going to pause the video here until this is finished installing, because I just want to show you how to remove that ISO image from the virtual CD drive or the virtual USB stick we plugged in to make it boot off of here, so that you can boot into your new Linux and play around with it. So I'll go ahead and do that. All right, didn't take very long now. So it's all done. We could restart now. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to click Done. Then I'm going to click the little Start menu at the bottom here, and I'm going to click Shutdown. And we can just let it time out, or I can click Shutdown again here. And it's going to shut down our virtual machine. Now, just like on our real computer, you plugged in the USB stick and booted off of the USB stick into Linux, right? The same thing happened here with the virtual machine. We plugged in a virtual USB stick with that Manjaro ISO image that you downloaded before, and now we have to remove it so that it doesn't keep booting into the original image. We want it to boot off of the Linux that we actually just installed into the virtual machine instead. Okay? So if it's could take a minute to shut down the first time. If it does, you can click the little X on your VirtualBox window there, and you can just power off the machine, which is safe to do because you're actually running that temporary environment, not the real version that you installed. So we can just power it off, it's fine. So the last thing we want to do here is go back to our Manjaro VM in VirtualBox, click Settings, and if you click Storage, see here we have a CD or DVD with the Manjaro ISO image in it. You remember those things, the round things that we used to play music on or watch movies with? If you click that, the little round one, and you see the little round disk image there, if you click that, you can say remove disk from virtual drive, and just click that. And so see now here it says empty. So that's like unplugging the USB stick from the computer, or if you're older like me, pushing the button to have the optical disc pop out and you take it out. Same deal. Click OK. And now we can double click our Manjaro VM, and it's going to boot up here. The very first time it boots up, it might be a little bit slower. It will fix that on the next boot. It'll make it faster. But the very first time, it's setting up all kinds of stuff for the first time. So it may take a moment longer. So you get the little dots going and the Manjaro logo there. And it all depends on the speed of your computer as well, right? And so here we are at the login screen. Because we only put one user on, that's the default user. And I'm going to punch in the password that I set up during the installation. Hit enter. And now we'll boot into our shiny new desktop for the first time. And so if you install this on a physical machine and you shut it down and you unplug the USB and reboot it, you should see the exact same thing. They have a nice welcome to Manjaro screen here with README and documentation and support forms and all of that stuff. You can turn that off by clicking the little toggle here that says launch at start. But if you want to keep seeing it, just leave the toggle launch at start. And I know everything is a little bit small here, but we're going to correct that next time. But one of the things that we should be able to do, if I maximize this, it should automatically resize to my screen. And that's why we had to do that video memory slider at the beginning, so that it does this nicely. So now we are booted into our brand new, nice, shiny Linux desktop. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how to configure this and how to use it and do some neat things with it right away. Hopefully this has been helpful to you, and hope you subscribe and like if you liked it, and I hope to see you back for the next video. Have a great day.